This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Man, oh man, did we just make it. No kidding. No kidding. The intro was playing, and we were looking for Frank, and we just found him. Everyone all set? Cocked, locked, blissed. I put on double bliss as the intro was playing. Really. Here we go. Your dial set correctly to USAPrepares.com. We're delighted you're here. We're broadcasting 2 hours from high atop the Missouri Ozark Mountains, Studio A. There's a link to your instructors on the website, USAPREPARES.com, USAPrepares.com. Converging threats are confronted daily by your instructors. I'm Vincent Finelli. Tom is producing the broadcast at GCN. No meetup tonight. Today's Labor Day, and the day in which you celebrate all that the government has done for the hard-working American. They've reached into the bowels of the unthinkable and shipped our manufacturing jobs off to our former foe, Communist China, and third world countries, so that you can pursue new careers at Hardee's and McDonald's and Burger King. And if you'd like, you can work in international trade directly for the largest Chinese factory outlet. Yes. And if you have the skills, the desire, and the personality for it, you can work way past the time you expected to retire. You can be an ambassador, a goodwill person, a greeter at the Chinese factory outlet in a neighborhood near you. You can be retrained from knowing your previous job and you can act confused. And you can say, I don't know where the oil filters might be. Maybe you can find them in the automotive department. Hey, I work in the produce department. And all this was brought to you by people in administrations dating to and before William Jefferson Blythe Clinton. You know, the people who never had sex with that woman, the people who said, read my lips, no new taxes, the people who said, I won't take your rifle, I won't take your pistol, I won't take your shotgun. The people who said, we don't read your emails. The people who said, we don't spy on Americans. Not to be greedy, your government will allow you to be employed with as many part-time jobs as you desire. All the while you're attempting to manage 2, 3, and 4 part-time jobs to approach half of your previous one-job income. But Labor Day is currently celebrated by most Americans as the symbolic end of summer. It used to be that Labor Day was considered the day in which it was no longer fashionable to wear white because it would start getting cooler. Frank Underhill's with us, UnderhillSecurities.com. Welcome, Frank.
Good morning, Vincent. Very nice intro this morning.
Well, Frank, I decided to vent a little bit. I was thinking about America, and I was thinking about how far we have fallen. You know, Frank, seriously, I know a lot of people who are trying to figure out how they can get yet another job and squeeze another job into 60 hours so that they can almost make their payments. Almost. We're falling down. We're falling down fast. We're broke. We're absolutely broke. And yet I see these politicians with Frank, these guys are afraid now. They've taken so many bribes. They are so corrupt that they are not willing to appear in public in town hall meetings. And as a matter of fact, I was at an event over the weekend. Dr. Shealy has an annual fireworks display, and normally it's on Independence Day, commonly known as the 4th of July. But we didn't have it on that day this year because of weather conditions. But anyway, he decided to have it this weekend. So a bunch of his friends showed up at the farm, and we were talking. We were talking about these politicians. And I'll tell you what, there are people who I've met that confirm, reconfirm, reconfirm that they know of politicians who have taken bribes, who have sold us out. And what I'm saying is all the things that we believe about politicians, they're true. They're absolutely true. These guys have sold us out. Frank, your thoughts?
Well, I agree, completely. You just have to look no further than out here on the West Coast with Randy Cunningham, decorated fighter pilot, Vietnam War, undefeatable member of Congress, only to lose it due to corruption, taking everything from Rolls Royces to Rolex watches. And where he is today, and serving time. And, his seat, I think, has since gone Democrat in a very San Diego conservative district. So it shows you what happens when politicians are bought. You look at in Illinois there with, Reverend Jesse Jackson's son, someone who you'd assume would be beyond reproach, taking gifts and serving prison there. And his wife, and it spreads. And this is the blinders on our government. It's like they are only in it for themselves. And I don't really think it even matters if you haven't taken any corruption. I think here's a case where you just what's that country term where you brush the whole barn white, or whitewash the barn, or some term like that.
Whitewashing.
Where they are all susceptible. Even that governor of Virginia accepting a Rolex watch. When you're in positions like that, you shouldn't be taking really any gifts, because chances are you never pay for a meal anyways, or everybody basically is on your beck and call, so you don't really need to have these material possessions. And whatever happened to people doing this for public service? And there's just too many cases of this kind of corruption, and this is what I think is more problematic than partisan politicking. It's partisan gift grabbing, I think.
You're right. As I use the term politician, I spell it with a lowercase p. And I think politicians are about the lowest form of life. I do not confuse a politician with a representative, and there are very few representatives. I think many politicians might initially start out meaning well. They might say, I'd really like to go in and change things for the better. But they're so weak. The people who are elected, Frank, are weak. And here's what I know. I know that, and I know this because I've been told this by senior people, and I've seen how they've tried to do this to me. And let me just give you an example. When I lived in Virginia, and here's how politics start. I bought a farm in Virginia many, many years ago, and there was a senior guy who was a politician, and he was a lawyer, and he had a law office on the main street of this town of 500 people, very small town. And he was a Southerner, and he said, hey, he was in the realtor's office. And so the real estate office and the law office, those were and the bank, that was pretty much it for Main Street. And so the lawyer would be referred his business by the real estate office. So they were in bed together. The lawyer owned lots of properties in town. and he would buy them up at pennies on the dollar when people were in distress. And he would know about that because they'd say, geez, we can't pay our bills. And I don't know, what am I going to do with this business on Main Street? And he'd find a buyer, which would be himself, and he would buy the business, and then he would rent it out to, new businesses trying to start up. And then he would give them a low rent, and then he would gouge them and put them out of business because the businesses would be unable to pay his exorbitant rents. All right. So that's the kind of people we're dealing with. So anyway, this lawyer, Frank, came in to the real estate office, and I happened to be in the middle room. There was the front room, middle room, and the back room of this real estate office. And it was designed so you could be in the middle room and hear what was going on, but generally customers coming into the front room wouldn't see you in the middle room. So the realtor worked in the middle room, and that's where he had some of his computer equipment. And I was a computer jockey, and I was a consultant, so I was working on the computer equipment in the middle room. Lawyer came in and said to the realtor, listen, we ought to get that Finelli guy. We ought to get him to run for office. See, we can tell him what to do, how to vote, and if it goes bad, he'll get the blame for it. My ears are perking up listening to this. And I'm listening to Politics 101, the stuff that's never taught in school. Yeah, we can get Finella. Finella, I guess is how you would pronounce it. We can get him. We can get him to do all our dirty work. And I looked at it and I thought, you got to be kidding me. And then I realized to put all the pieces together right then and there. Here's what they do. They take someone who they think they can control and mold and shape, and they find somebody with an ego that they think is big enough, and they tell that person, hey, I think we can get you elected. And then that person says, wow, really, me? I could get elected? And they pat themselves on the back, yeah, wow, okay, yeah, if you think I'm good enough, well, no, son, we think you are great, you'll be wonderful. And all the while, they're trying to convince that person to become the person who they want him to be, the person to take bribes and be corrupt. Frank, that's how it works. I saw it. Of course, I didn't do it. I told them to take a hike, but I saw them discuss how they were going to set me up. Politicians 101. That's how it works.
Stunning. What can I say? Nothing short of stunning. And this is why we are in these dilemmas. And and again, this is why I focus on things that are true to value. A block of a bar of gold, a bar of silver will never lie to you. It sits there. It is what it is. It's a hedge of inflation. It's a hedge against the dollar.
Hold that thought, Frank. We'll be right back. Hold that thought. Frank Underhill's with us, and Frank, I'm looking at gold. Gold 1392.9. And, it's down just a little bit. It's down $3.60, but $3.60. But I'll tell you what, the overall trend is exactly what you said it would be. It is trending up, safe, and steady. What do you think?
Sell off. And I think, it's going to take time, but I think that gold is probably getting its footing once again. And I think when we spoke a few episodes back when silver was under $20 an ounce, and we were saying if silver can break 20, look where it'll go. And I think silver's like 23 and change, 24 right now.
Frank, at this very second, silver's 24.22, up 20% from when you said that.
And of course, I had calls from people saying, "Oh, hey, so-and-so on the radio, or so-and-so says here, sell this, it's junk, sell that." And this was when, say this one particular issue is trading at $2.50, and now it's knocking on $5 right now. And it had an all-time high of like $7.50. And, I get these kind of whimsical phone calls of saying, I heard this. Well, remember, when people listen to these people on radio or on television or internet, these people are not really, I don't want to say, maybe they get the crystal balls or reading in tea leaves, but I wonder what facts they base it on. Like me, I just go on what the dollar does, and if a company is still drilling, well, if they're still pulling out high-grade results, why would you sell it? Especially if you already own it and crystallize losses. And you have to be very patient with these markets. But I get calls saying, "Well, I have this, and should I sell that?" And well, you can sell it, but two, what are you going to reinvest it in? And two, what are you going to do you want a loss? And two, what are you going to reinvest it in? And and of course, you've seen these stocks, put on 40%, 50% from the bottom. Even Bob Chapman, if he were alive today, he would be saying buy more when it was really falling out of bed. And even look at household names like Barrick, how they've come up off their lows right there. Basically, there's a lot of misinformation out there, and people should, try to look at other sources for information that doesn't come from people that say, here, get out of this, get out of that, get out of... Well, that's already fine if you're not in it. But if you're already in it, you have choices: do nothing, average down, or sell and get out. And if anyone got out of the bottom of these metals, well, that they've gone up so high, it would be very costly to replace that position again.
Mm-hmm. Right. And Frank, I can tell you that as the metals bottomed, I did not panic. I did not sell, and it's happened several times. It's not that it happened just once. And we've said over and over on this broadcast, don't let them pry it out of your hands. Don't let them convince you that you need to sell at the bottom, because these are the same corrupt people who manipulate the market, who drive the price down so that you panic. They tell you to panic, and then they try to buy it from you. If it was so bad, why would they want to buy it?
Vincent, case in point, you look at that show on national television here, Pawn Stars. I've been in that store as a visitor, and when you see people bringing in antiquities and comic books, forget that nonsense. Right up at the front, they have a counter with gold coins, gold bars. And I'm sure that Harrison family would be more than happy to take your silver and your gold off of you at their prices. They'd love you to come in because they move it out. I was watching an epic... Let's cut to break and we'll go back.
Yeah, we'll talk about Pawn Stars when we come back. I know one of the experts on Pawn Stars. I knew him before he went on television. Frank Underhill, UnderhillSecurities.com. He's the CEO. We'll be right back. We were talking about Pawn, P-A-W-N, Stars, the television series. What were you saying about that, Frank?
Well, like I said, they're more than happy to take your gold in there. And I don't know if they particularly work in these, but we know that gold is also a cash equivalent. And I think what a lot of people who deal in this will take the gold, they'll take it to a bank, they'll use it as collateral, say at 5 or 6% interest, 8%, and then they'll take that money and loan it out to their customers for whatever rates they can get. So, there is a very, very steep intrinsic value in gold. So regardless, it'll always be worth something. And now how we got on this, talked about corruption. We talked about gold. Gold and silver are incorruptible. That's the point I wanted to make. And if anything is even when gold sold down to $300, when Clinton was in, gold still had a value regardless of what the markets did. And there was an ad I heard on the radio about gold as well, too, and gold IRAs. And I think that regardless what gold does, it should be a cornerstone in investing. And I wouldn't even use the word investing. I just use it as another term of savings. And if you see that television show and many others like it, you'll see why they don't mind buying it. I was watching it one program where there was a bail bondsman that got stuck with a bad debit, and the only collateral was a gold coin. That gold coin, I think, was worth $20,000-$30,000, and he was able to recover most of his bail bond out of it, out of 1 ounce of old government minted coin. The grader came in and analyzed it, and fair is fair. So people need to, really step back and reassess and not listen to what all these people are saying. Oh, we got to sell this and sell that and get out of this and get out of that. People need to be looking at a way to diversify, and I think through gold and silver holdings. And like I was saying, when silver was under $20 an ounce, I was, like probably most people, like concerned, why is gold taking this move up quickly and silver hasn't? But silver looks like it's caught up in a relatively short period of time, so that should put into people's mind, silver below 20, very undesirable. Silver above 20 an ounce is very desirable. So people should look at that as well, too.
Frank, in 2008, I was invited to a seminar right here in Missouri. The bank that I patronize invited me and probably about 50. There were about 50 of us that went to this meeting. And it was, they had lunch, and it was pretty much an all-day event. And it was a seminar they hosted on investing and where the market is going, because back then we were concerned about the bailouts and the collapse of the economy. Well, they had one of our state representatives there, and he was talking about taking the bailout money, and I said, so I pulled. It was a time we could ask questions. I pulled out a credit card out of my pocket, and I said, "I have a credit card here, and on the way home, if I want to, there's probably enough credit limit left on this credit card for me to stop off and buy a car, a used car, a nice car. But I don't really need a car, and it would be irresponsible for me to go and do that." Now, I know for a fact that there's interest attached to this credit card, and I know for a fact what the interest rate is that's attached to this credit card should I not pay off that debt at the end of the month. So I know what I'm getting into. And I said to the state representative, you have no idea what the strings from Washington, D.C. are attached to this bailout money that you're talking about accepting for our county. And he said, you're absolutely right. And I said, so what you should do as my representative is say no. We don't want your money. We don't need your money. And we're going to do it without the strings attached from Washington, D.C. He said, well, thanks so much. We're going to take the money. That was one thing I wanted to share with you. The other thing I wanted to share with you, at this very same meeting, Frank, at the end of the presentation, the vice president of loans came on stage and talked about, you know what? We have money that we can lend you. If you have a viable asset, we will lend you money. And the rate, I think at the time, he was talking about somewhere around 4%. And he said, we have it, and we're willing to lend it. So after the meeting, I walked up to him. I introduced myself, and he was an employee of the bank sponsoring this event. And I said, I'm considering borrowing $100,000 from you. And here's what I propose doing. And first of all, he probably didn't like my language. I'm considering borrowing it from him rather than, would you please lend me the money? I said, here's what I propose doing. Gold is about $700 an ounce. I'd like to borrow $100,000 to start. And then after a month, I will repay you. I'm going to use the money to buy gold. which I will deposit with you as soon as I buy it. Then I'm going to sell the gold as the price appreciates. And then I'm going to buy more. And we'll work our way up from 100,000 to 250, 300, 500,000 from there. He looked at me like I was crazy. He said, we don't know how to do that. And I said, what do you mean? He said, well, we don't lend money to buy gold. And I said, you mentioned that if it was a viable asset, you'd be willing to lend on it. And he said, well, that's for houses and cars. I said, are you kidding me? You would lend me money to buy a brand new car right now that will depreciate 20% the minute I put the key in the ignition? You're willing to do that? You're willing to lend me money on a house that if I don't pay the note, you're going to have to get it appraised. You're going to have to put it on the real estate market. You're going to pay a 6 or 7% commission in order to liquidate it. And you don't know if there's a buyer in sight. And you'll do that and you'll incur all the legal fees and all the paperwork, but you won't take gold? Are you kidding me? He said, we don't know how to do it. He said, we don't know how to do it.
I find that very odd because, like you said about the car, but what you didn't mention about the real estate is real estate cannot be a disposable asset within 24 hours. On the other hand, gold can be liquidated promptly.
That's what I'm saying, Frank. What I'm saying is this guy, this banker would let me go buy a car, okay, that will depreciate 20% on the transfer of title to the first buyer. All right, he would do that. I mean, has anybody ever bought a car and sold it for what they paid for it? A brand new car?
Vincent, if I was going to, and your listeners, if I was going to repossess something, I'd rather repossess gold. I wouldn't have to pay a registration fee. I wouldn't have to pay for insurance. I wouldn't have to pay for a repo man to get it. I would just hold the collateral as gold. It's so simple.
Well, that is exactly the offer that I presented, that I would buy gold at $700 an ounce. The bank would hold it, and at some point, probably within 30 days, I would sell it, and I would pay them off in full, and then we'd try it again, and again, and again. And they told me no. And then, they all know me at this bank. I walk in.
They tell you no because they'll go out and do that themselves and cut you out.
Unbelievable, Frank. Here's what happened. So after months later, I'd walk in the bank and they'd say, hey, Vincent, how's it going? I go, terrible. And they go, what's up? And I go, remember that $700 gold? It's $800. And then, the next time I come in, remember that $800 gold? It's $850, $900, $1,000. 1,100, and I kept reminding him what idiots they were that they wouldn't do it. Now, they did tell me that they would take a note with my farm as collateral, and I said, now why would I put my farm up as collateral? Why would I do that? So,
especially when and already had the move.
Not only that, they explained something to me, a very interesting thing. They said, Mr. Finelli, tell you what we'll do. We will lend you at, I think it was 2%. We will lend you funds at 2%. And here's what you can do. You can borrow against the money you have in the bank. Whatever you have in the bank, we will lend you all of that. And we'll only charge you 2%. There was silence from my end of the phone. And I said, let me see if I got this right. So I have money in the bank. And you will lend me my whatever that is, and you'll only charge me 2%? And they said, right. I said, have you lost your mind? They want to lend me my money and charge me 2%. And I said, you've lost your mind. Have you ever presented that to anybody that has said, hey, what a great deal, I'll do it? And they said, well, actually, we have. I said, we're doomed. We're doomed. Anybody that would take that is out of their minds. Who would borrow their own money, Frank, and pay interest
on their own money?
Frank, that's like me saying to you, I'll tell you what, Frank, that 100, can I have that 100 that's in your wallet? And you give it to me, and I go, I'll tell you what. I'll lend it back to you and charge you $2.
Yeah.
That's a banker's mindset. In this very same bank, well, I got to be careful. It's going to be rebroadcast right in this bank's marketplace tonight. Anyway, they hit me with a fee for falling below $1,000 on my checking account. And it's free checking and actually getting interest. So I got like 11 cents interest on this checking account, and they hit me with an $8 fee for going below $1,000. I called them up. I'll tell you what they did when we come back. Frank Underhill's with us. He's the CEO of UnderhillSecurities.com. Underhill, UNDERHILL, Securities.com. And security trading is closed for the day. But I just want to say that the bank was kind enough when I said, hey, you guys charged $8 for going below $1,000 on my checking account. You pay me 11 cents interest, and you charge me $8. They said, oh, we're going to fix that. They took it right off. So the word to the wise is, if you see charges like that on your account, I suggest you consider saying to your bank, are you sure you want to do that? And then the next step is close your account. If they say we're going to charge you $8 and you're a good customer, they're going to charge you $5, whatever it might be. Have them reverse those charges. Okay. I don't mean that you should violate the rules, but the next thing I did was I said, I'll tell you what, I don't want this kind of account. I don't want this to happen again. Just change it to free checking. So they changed my account to free checking. So anyway, $8 for going below $1,000. I mean, come on, Frank. I was looking at eBay this weekend, and I saw something that really piqued my interest. I just happened to see something that it was called an aluminum electronics project enclosure. Now, this thing is a little box. It's made out of aluminum, and hobbyists might make something electronic or put electronic devices in it. And it's 4 inches by 2 inches by 6 inches. It's just a chassis. A few screws hold it together. So it's a chassis. It's a box. It's an aluminum sheet metal box. 4 inches by 2 inches by 6 inches. Now, it says that the last one that was sold, there were, this was the last one, 36 of them were sold, and you can buy it for $117.90. Now, nobody in their right mind would buy this thing for $117.90. I posted it I did a screen print, put it on the website. I don't believe it. It says there are 41 people watching it, 36 of them were sold. This is the last one, and you can buy it for $117.90. This is 4 inches by 2 inches by 6 inches. There's nothing inside of it. It's an aluminum chassis. I believe that eBay, this is my belief. I believe that eBay is lying. I believe they're lying to people with that information. I don't believe that 36 of them were sold at $117.90. I don't believe it. A coffee cup has more value than this aluminum chassis. I'm serious, Frank. I'm not kidding. It's an empty box. It's an empty box made out of aluminum. And I've got a bunch of them, around here at the farm that I, built projects in when I was a lot younger, science fair projects and stuff like that. It's worth $5. It really is. So what I'm saying, Frank, is I think the numbers are lying to us on lots of levels. I think the numbers about the jobs, how many jobs are created, which, I don't believe that. I don't believe the unemployment numbers. I don't believe retail sales figures. I don't believe any of the numbers that come out on the news. None of them.
Consumer price index and the shilling home index and all this nonsense. And yeah, I agree.
I don't believe it.
I don't
believe it. So
figures.
So, class, if you want to go to the website, usaprepares.com, you'll see a picture of this box. You'll see what it looks like. You'll see, I didn't fabricate this. This is from eBay. So now they've got this thing. Whenever I'm looking at something, it tells me how many people are watching it. And I'm thinking, there are a whole bunch of people that want this one thing. So I am now doing what I used to do. And here's the attitude I take whenever I'm looking for I'll have to tell you when we come back on the other side, because it'll take me about 30 seconds to tell you the story about what happens when Vinny goes looking for a car and he happens to be at a car dealer. He doesn't look at new cars. He only looks at used cars. So I'll tell you what Vinny does and the attitude he takes when he's attempting to buy a vehicle. And the response to the salesman saying, it's the last one. It's the last one. And there's somebody else interested. Frank Underhill and I will be right back after top of the hour news, a few commercials, usaprepares.com, underhillsecurities.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Everyone all set? Cocked? Locked? All right, here we go. Frank Underhill's with us. This is USAPrepares.com, hour number 2, and during the final minutes of hour number 1, I mentioned what it's like when Vinny goes to buy a car. And here's how it goes. Vinny doesn't buy new cars. Only bought one new car in my entire life, and that I think was back in the 70s when you could buy a new car easily for $3,000 or $4,000 or $5,000. Anyway, so I only look at used vehicles, and invariably, the salesperson will say, and I try to deal only with the sales manager. I ask who the sales manager is before I go looking at any vehicles, and then I discuss it right with him, and we drive the commissions absolutely to the lowest. And anyway, I tell him that if I were to buy the vehicle, it would be a cash transaction, no financing, and make it very, very simple. So we place the offer, and either the offer is accepted or not, or we negotiate, and then we buy the vehicle. Well, invariably, here's what happens. The sales manager will tell me, well, I just want you to know that there's another person looking at this vehicle. And that kind of puts the pressure on. And, Vinny doesn't like pressure. He doesn't deal well with pressure. And he certainly doesn't respond well when people tell him what to do. So here's my response. Wow, that's great. It looks like you're going to sell it. I feel good about that. I'm glad. Now, if the other person doesn't buy it, give me a call. And maybe I'll come back. That's how I handle it. Frank, what do you think?
Well, that's the only way to handle it, and I don't like being pressured at all. And I've had that bait and switch put on me where I just go and look for another dealer, another car to buy. And I concur. I don't like pressure because I don't live in pressure.
Mm-hmm. Right. But you do live where it's really sunny in Nevada. And, Frank, I wanted to share this with you. I was reading the news before the broadcast, before hour number 1, and the sun was so hot on Saturday here in Missouri. Literally, we have a garage that faces the east, and we have one that faces the west. So one of them gets sun on the garage doors in the morning, and the other gets it in the afternoon. Frank, it was so hot on Saturday, the sun was so bright here in Missouri that I could not put my hands on the garage door handle to lift the garage door. And I'm talking, we have standard garage doors like most people have, these overhead garage doors, 9 foot by 9 foot, a little large to put the equipment in. But I could not lift the garage door because the handle was in the bright sunlight. It was that hot. Now let me take that to the next level. There was a report of a vehicle that was parked in the reflection of a glass building window. And the sun was beating down on the glass, reflecting from the window to, like a skyscraper type building, to the street down below. The sun was so hot that it melted the plastic body parts on a vehicle parked on the street. Now, what I'm saying is the sun was so hot here in Missouri that I couldn't open the garage door handles, couldn't touch them without, some kind of insulation, either gloves or a rag or something. That's what I'm trying to describe. I'm also saying that the sun was so hot that I could not work in the sun. I could not do farming in the sun during the day. It was that hot, unbearably hot. And I called on Sunday, some of our instructors, and I said, have you guys been outside? I mean, were you outside on Saturday? And they said it was so hot that they couldn't spend more than 5 minutes outside. It was that hot. Frank, what I'm saying is the weather is changing. This is not normal. We are in for a rough ride, and there are violent swings in temperature, rain, and so forth. What do you think?
Well, I think a lot of it has to do simply with all these emissions in the air. But contrary to belief, when you look at other countries, they are far bigger polluters than we are. And a friend of mine lives up in Vancouver, Canada, and they're trying to get people out of their cars and throw everybody on some big government transit system. Well, the last time this experiment happened was in Cambodia when Pol Pot got everybody out of their cars and moved them, where, into the countryside. The enemy is not the car. If they shut down that big regional airport, Vancouver International, the air pollution, the chemtrails, and the smog would go away instantly. But instead, bureaucrats like to put the blame on a person driving a 4- or 6-cylinder car, thinking we're the biggest polluters in the world, which is a bunch of nonsense.
Okay, I'm with you. And not only am I with you, do we have to fly everywhere? Do we really have to fly everywhere?
Oh, heaven's sake. Oh, Boston is backed up. This is backed up. Everything. It's nonsense.
So when Obama flies, he just doesn't hop in one jet. There are fighters that fly with him. They have transports. They bring his limousine wherever he goes. Even if he goes to Europe, they bring multiple limousines, so he can ride around in his vehicles. It's the extravagance, the space launches, the rockets, the military detonations, the tanks, all the stuff that our military does. By the way, do you think that they have catalytic converters on these tanks? Do you think they have catalytic converters on Air Force One or Air Force Two? Do you think that any of these jets, that these massive oxygen burners, do they have any of the air pollution reduction equipment that we're forced to have? Do they? I don't think so. Anyway.
It's just too much. A prime minister of England has maybe one car following him and a motorcycle escort, and same with the prime minister. But in this country, the president has 50 cars and all this. It's a manufactured industry, is what it is.
It's a good way of putting it, Frank. And I was thinking over the weekend, I have had some time as it was getting real early in the morning and when it was getting dark, when I was out of the rays, the direct rays of the sun. I had some time to do tractor therapy. And tractor therapy class is when you get on a farm tractor and you ride around in these concentric circles, either mowing or raking or baling. You know, that's tractor therapy, and it's kind of quiet, and except for the roar of the engine and the sound of the machinery. So during tractor therapy this weekend, I was thinking about some of the things that bother me, and one of the things that bothers me is when people bash down doors with their faces covered. They wear ski masks, and I was thinking about this Western that I saw, this Western movie years ago. And these guys were standing next to their horses, and they pulled up their handkerchiefs, and they covered their face. They covered their nose all the way up to their eyes. They had a hat on, so all you could see was their eyelashes, their eyebrows, and their eyes. Their ears covered, their top of their head covered, their hair was covered, their face was covered. So they were hiding themselves because they didn't want people to recognize who they were. So they hopped on their horses, they galloped in, and they performed the robbery at gunpoint. I'm trying to think, is this similar to anything that's happening today? People wearing masks, people hiding their faces, people in uniforms, military uniforms with Velcro removable name tags so they can peel off their names. You know, in World War II, the Army uniform was different from the Navy uniform, different from the Marine uniform. You could tell, and the guys had their names on their uniforms. Same thing with the Vietnam era. They were sewn on. You couldn't just peel them off. Well, today, that's not the case. Today, you can't tell who's who very easily. The names are removable. They can wear masks. They can hide from who they are. Now, why is it that they're allowed to do that? Why? What? Imagine this. Just imagine. Imagine one of you, any one of you, walking down a city street with a ski mask on. What would happen? What would happen if you just stood in front of a bank, looked left, looked right, looked left, looked right, looked left, looked right, for a couple minutes with a ski mask on? What would happen? What would happen if there were two of you standing together on a street in a city with ski masks on? How long do you think it would be before somebody in a uniform came to find out what you're doing and hauled you away in handcuffs? How long would that take? Because you had a mask over your face, that you wanted to hide your identity. Here's the point. Why are we allowing people to hide their identity that work for us? Why? Why is that? What would happen? Seriously, what would happen if you walked into a bank with a ski mask on? What would happen? What would happen? I'm not suggesting you do it because you might get killed. But what would happen? Do you think an armed guard would be pointing a gun in your face for just walking into a bank with a ski mask on? What would happen if you walked into a bank with a hoodie? What would happen? Think about that. And then think about what these guys do in the SWAT teams. It's exactly what they do. Except they have battering rams and guns and bash down doors and people get shot. Why is that? Why do we allow that? Who's in charge? Frank Underhill, Vincent Finelli, USAPreparedness.com. During the break, Tom and I were chatting for a minute, and I'll tell you the rest of the story, but Tom, I will not. Tom's our producer at GCN. Tom, I won't mention our instructor's name. But one of us was interested in buying a vehicle. And he and his buddy found it on Craigslist. And what they wanted was they found a a totaled vehicle for salvage, and they wanted the engine, the transmission, and the rear, because they had another vehicle that was good except for the engine, the transmission, and the rear. So they found this vehicle on Craigslist, and they called the guy, and the guy said, okay, well, it's really my father's, and he died, and I'm going to be able to get the title, but you can come out and look at it. So they said, okay. They arranged a time, and they said, okay, we'll bring the trailer. And anyway, the body of this other vehicle, the one that they wanted to consider buying, was destroyed, but it was drivable. So the USAPrepares.com instructor and his buddy went to see it. They brought the trailer and truck to take it home, should it work, and should they arrive at the right price and so forth. And so they took it around the block, and they stopped, and the police came and arrested everybody, including the USAPrepares.com instructor and his buddy. Why? Because the vehicle was stolen. So here we have one of us, trying to buy a vehicle, do it the right way, get the title, do all that stuff, and all we did was test drive it and get arrested. Back of the squad car, handcuffs, the whole thing. I wasn't there, but I can imagine that happening to anybody. So I just wanted to share that is the story, Tom. Ultimately, the person who was involved with USA Prepares in another state was released, and the person who was trying to sell the stolen vehicle was beat up by the cops and was hauled off to jail. That's the story.
No fun.
No fun. So isn't that amazing? I mean, when I say on the air that this is USAPrepares.com, we're not capable of holding down jobs, and many of us have either had the police called on them or have been arrested. That's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about. We just happen to do things, and the cops come. So ultimately, we're released, but we get charged with all kinds of things, and we're an interesting group. Frank Underhill, I wanted to share this with you. Fukushima is leaking more radiation than thought, 18 times more. So here the government of Japan says, shoot, it really is leaking more than we thought. I guess we'll go public with that information. Here's why this is so important. Dr. Richard Allen Miller, you met him, Frank, and he was at the expo, and he's been on the radio with us a lot. He said, don't eat the seafood out of the Pacific. Last night I was on the phone with a man who is very close to our family. He's probably around 70 years old, late 60s or 70 or so. Haven't talked to him in a couple of years, and he called me last night, and I said, hey, how's it going? He goes, well, I'm trying to get well. So, wow, what's going on? He said, well, he described he is having he's having some fainting spells, and they're checking him out, this week, probably starting tomorrow at the hospital in the Ozarks. And I asked about his wife, and he said, well, she just was operated on last week. And I said, why? And he said, well, she had something with her thyroid. I said, was it cancer? And he said, well, they didn't think so at first, but yeah, it turned out to be cancer. But it's okay. They got it all. They got it all. How often do they say that? They got it all. Yeah, we think we got it all. How often does that happen? It's all the time, right? They always think they got it all. Well, I explained to him about Fukushima, and he was unaware of what I was talking about. Frank, I'm convinced that most people do not know about Fukushima. And I said, Pete, stop eating seafood from the Pacific Ocean right now. As a matter of fact, stop eating all seafood right now, because it's risky, because of Fukushima. And he asked me what I meant, and I explained to him that the radiation in the water from the leaking nuclear reactors that General Electric built is of such concern that the Finelli family has not eaten fish from the ocean since the accident or the catastrophe or the tsunami or whatever you want to call it at Fukushima, Japan. Frank, when we come back, let's talk about Syria. What is going on in Syria? And Frank Underhill. Frank Underhill is the CEO of UnderhillSecurities.com. Class, just as an announcement, there is no meetup tonight. No meetup tonight, okay? We're going to fire up the next meetup next Monday. Not tonight, but the following Monday. We're going to learn about quail, raising quail, and quail eggs. Quail for meat and quail for eggs. How much does it cost? How many do you need? How fast do they mature? Raising quail by an expert. USAprepares.com instructor coming up next Monday, not tonight. No meetup tonight. Frank, Syria, what's going on?
Well, I follow Syria through gold. Like, there looked like war was imminent. Gold shot up to 1435, and then the drumbeats of war have died off a bit, and gold is like at 1400, I believe. But the important thing is gold did move up, and that shows you how hair trigger these markets are, or this metal is, that if there's a quick urgency, and gold is usually a good inflation head with war, as we saw with the Afghan war, the Iraq war. Gold went from 900 up to 1900, and then of course with the drawdowns in troops, you're seeing gold basically go down. But now you're seeing war again, and you're seeing gold at this 1400 level, and it does not really take a whole lot of current events to move gold. And I think that what we are looking at is they were saying, first of all, this Congress never agreed with this president on anything anyways, and then they go, well, now he needs approval of Congress to go to war, and now it's whatever they're saying, who knows where it's at. And basically, I think that we got no place getting involved in a civil war, and they talk about all these chemical weapons and a sort, but the bottom line is, if these people just stayed at home and watched television, I don't think their government would have unleashed these kind of arsenal on the civilian population anyways. And maybe it's their form of tear gas over there for crowd control or who knows. But we just don't have any place going over there and kicking over another hornet's nest.
Frank, I'd like you to comment on this, please. I heard an announcer on the radio make what I would consider a Freudian slip. And he was talking about Syria, and he was talking about gold, and he put the two in the same sentence. And he basically said, gold's moving up. And, when at times like this, people move to quality assets. They move to safety of their investments. They move to security. And gold is up. That's what he said, Frank. No kidding. What are your thoughts?
Well, I agree, but, I like people to take a look at gold just solely on what I believe is a contra-dollar currency, and not one that trades on headlines of the day, basically. If you're into trading markets, then you can use the headline du jour to trade it and in and out. But generally, I just like to stick with what the dollar does and use it as a contra-dollar currency, as opposed to what, again, the news du jour is. Because, we, as Vincent, like yourself or me and most people who listen to programs, we don't live our lives on the daily news broadcast. We live our lives on how we feel things are going. And it's very easy to get consumed by the managed media, the talking heads on the various business networks, when I think that we can come to our own rational decisions where we should be in, and we don't need a talking head to tell us where we should be.
You're right, Frank. You are absolutely right. And what the point I was alluding to is, here we have a news commentator saying that gold is an asset that is valued in times of trouble. going to safety because we might be going to war. So here's a guy that would normally be talking about other kinds of investments, risky paper investments. And now he's saying, this is serious, class. This is serious. And you know what? Gold. That's why gold is up, because people are worried. And that's why you buy gold in the first place. Because if you want quality, if you want safety, if you want security, if you want privacy, gold and silver, that's where it's at. And it's always been like that.
That's where it's at. In the Middle East, gold has always been a currency, whether it's in Syria or Dubai or Saudi Arabia or Emirates, Iran. Gold has always been their currency of trade or barter for centuries. And I think, Vincent, there's a guest you have who's one of your experts on government mind control. And I would really like to get his take on what's going on with the media's control of the mind.
Okay, that's Thursday. You're talking about Dr. Richard Alan Miller, the real Fox Mulder of the X-Files. He wrote the first 6 episodes of the X-Files. He's on with us on Thursdays for 2 hours. And I will bring up mind control. Frank, specifically on Thursday, I will discuss with him mind control and why the media is convincing us that gold and silver, for the most part, they're convincing us that it's not the way to go. We should be in other paper, high-risk assets where people tend to lose their money. I will ask him on Thursday.
Yeah, there's always been naysayers out there who are always saying that gold is redundant, silver is redundant, just rely on earnings and balance sheets and yield, dividend, price earnings, and all this hyperbole. And it's very easy for people to get lost in all the with all the static. And I always say, like, programs like yourself separate the static from the chatter from the matter. And it's very easy for people to get lost with all these quote pundits and talking heads. Like, now they're saying people should be jumping on electric cars and batteries now that with companies that trade in the multi dollars. And again, I think that puts people at risk. I really think the media is hell-bent on putting everybody at risk, actually.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because
Absolutely.
They're easier to control when people are poor and broke and got nothing to lose than if people are prosperous and have equity in the home and have food in the fridge. And I'm really like, with what I go through, I get, regulators coming in, or, they always check on me, and they want to know what I'm doing and all this. And the fact of the matter is, I don't go out and sell product to widow and orphans. And with huge promises of guaranteeing and great returns and, like advertising how they do on television with index funds, 2 women sitting, having a coffee, talking about complicated investments like it's, something that everybody should be in, or as common as having cereal in the morning.
Mm-hmm. I saw a video. Our son dropped this off. He thought that his mom and dad would really like to see this particular video. It's called, in class, I'd like to assign this as homework. It's exactly what Frank is talking about. Exactly. I have it in my hand. It's called Assault on Wall Street. Assault on Wall Street. Dominic Purcell stars in it. He is the man who played Link in Prison Break. He's a big guy. And I'm just going to read the back cover. It says, "Fight the power, fight the greed, fight for justice." Jim is an average New Yorker living a peaceful life with a well-paying job and a loving family. Suddenly, everything changes when the economy crashes, causing Jim to lose his job, his home, and his wife. And what happened? And that's true. His wife committed suicide in the movie. Filled with anger and rage, Jim snaps and goes to extreme lengths to seek revenge for the life taken from him. So what happened was his wife was sick. She had extensive medical treatments and medical bills and drugs that she had to take in order to fight this disease, this protracted, prolonged, debilitating disease that she had. She lost her job. And then, so he put everything he could on the credit card. The retirement fund that he had paid into had collapsed. He couldn't get his money out. The lawyers were certainly willing to take all the money he had left, that he had to, even money he had to borrow. And so here's this guy who is in the spirals of losing everything. His wife feels bad because she has this disease and she's wiping out the family financially. And because they put everything on the credit card, his credit rating goes down the drain. He loses his job because he's a security person at an armored delivery company. They can't have him around because his credit rating is so down. So they fire him. So now he loses the income that he did have, and he just loses it. He loses it. And he decides he's going to take revenge on all those who have lied, who have cheated, who have stolen from him. And that's what happens. And this is absolutely riveting. Now, the language in it is way, way stronger than I'd like. None of the profanity is needed in any movie. And I apologize for recommending something that has profanity in it. My children know that I don't like profanity. They know it.
But it's a strong topic, Vincent, and maybe the vocabulary, because it's so strong, and like you just describing it to me pulls at my heartstrings.
Well, Frank, here we have a wife who has. She didn't say, "Hey, honey, listen, I'm going to get a disease and destroy the family." It happened. It happened, and then the system. No one was willing to help. The government wasn't willing to help. Everybody was in this guy's way. It was horrible. This is a gut-wrenching video. Assault on Wall Street Class. It's your homework. Frank and I will be right back. Class, you just heard an advertisement, a commercial for the freeze-dry guy. And I'd like to share this with you. The freeze-dry guy is one of us. And he's a USAPrepares.com instructor. He's also an advertiser. And he has stuck with me from the beginning. And even with all the trouble that I've gotten myself into, he has never left me. I've been fired 5 times from the radio in 12 months. Never on Genesis, though. Never. And he's never said anything about it other than, "Vinny, you must be over the target to take that much flack." That's a quote. If you're considering food, freeze-dried food, please consider the freeze-dry guy. I wanted to share this with you. I called him up one day and I said, freeze-dry guy, I was working on a vehicle, our son's vehicle, and I opened the trunk to disconnect the battery. His battery's in the trunk. And I was working on the alternator to test the alternator for him. And there it was. There was a bucket of freeze-dry guy food that my son bought on his own. Actually, he bought many buckets on his own at the Get Prepared Expo. I didn't even know it. He was over there buying food from the freeze-dry guy. So I just want to share with you that we are customers, and we pay the same discounted prices that you can pay. So if you want to call them, 866-404-3663, 866-404-3663, freeze-dry guy. Frank, you've got the con. What would you like to share with our class today?
Well, I'd just like to share with the class, everybody have a very good Labor Day. Enjoy your day and try not to do chores at home. Read a book, I guess. And Vincent, we had a good program today, and thanks for having me on. And as for opting to take the broadcast off for the day, it was good being with you, as always.
You know, Frank, I got a call yesterday afternoon, almost into last evening, And Nathan called me and he said, "Hey, Vinny, are you on tomorrow? Are you live?" And I said, yeah, we're live. I said, unless that's going to cause a problem. And he said, no, I just wanted to make sure because, some of the broadcasters take the day off and rightfully so. I try not to take time off. I really don't. I feel like I have an obligation to the class to be live as much as I can. So I called Frank, and I want to share this with the class, Frank. So I called you up, and I said, Frank, I got this call. My understanding was that we're live today. And Frank said, yeah, we're live. We're live. And so I immediately called back the producer, Nathan, and I told him that we were live. And he said, oh, great. So... And they were just confirming that we were not going to be doing a rebroadcast. We were going to be live today, even though the markets are closed, even though it's a national holiday, even though it's a day that people go out and spend money that they don't have. So I just wanted to share that with you, Frank, that thanks for being with us live today, not taking the day off. And, Frank, Congress is avoiding the voters. They are steering clear of town hall meetings. That's something that you had mentioned before. They are. What do you think? What's going on?
Well, I'm one of these people that are very disappointed with I got to say I'm not so much disappointed with the Democrats. I'm pretty disappointed with Republicans for not following through whatever they said they were going to do. They said they were going to get rid of the health care. It's still here, even though they voted so many times against it. They said they were going to raise the debt, not raise the debt ceiling. Well, like before, they've raised it before, and now it's coming up again next month, and they'll raise it again. I don't know what to say. It's a lot harder to make a promise and do it than to make a promise and not do it. But everything they're promising, it seems to go through anyway. They say they'll shut down government. Government is still operating as far as I can tell. And even with the recess, they're still spending money. So I don't know what gives. And, I'm deeply disappointed here with Joe Hecht right now. Maybe we need to look for somebody more conservative. I think he's just towing the party line. He says he supports veterans. Well, right now, where's all this money coming from to support veterans? It just doesn't end. The spending doesn't end, and the deficit ceiling keeps going higher, and I can go on another program like this.
Hey, well, let's do another program. Frank, we're out of time. Class, above all, honesty and integrity. What happens next is up to you.